Hi, it's Russ from Pro Tools Expert, and the news broke yesterday that Waves have launched their first virtual instruments. And it's a synthesizer, an analog-based synthesizer. It's dual oscillator with a VCF and a VCA, and also has a FX section, an EQ section, variable LFOs, 4 LFOs, a modulation matrix, a third assignable envelope 3, and then it has global stuff like the quality and the tempo stuff, and then it has a built-in arpeggiator and sequencer as well, which you can use, a step-based sequencer. So it seems to have all the things that you need to make a great sound. I suppose the two questions are, how easy is it to get around? And secondly, how does it sound? In the information, it says it was created by a guy who's worked with people like Goldfrapp and the Pet Shop Boys. And actually, if you listen to one of the demos, it sounds very similar to some of the stuff the Pet Shop Boys would have created as sequences in their own songs, so I'm not surprised to hear that. Now, I've been using this for about 15 minutes and not used the manual. I just wanted to see how far I could get without opening the manual. So I'm going to give you a pretty good guided tour of this and then let you see what you think of it and give you my opinion on it. So the first thing you want to do when you get it open up, now one thing to notice straight away is I'm using this in standalone mode. You can use it in your sequencer in a DAW, but you can also use it in standalone mode. So I've got it connected on my Mac straight away on the desktop, and it's working in standalone mode. So we can go into the preferences section and we can choose the outputs. And Pro Tools uses, so I've got HD native there if I want to use that, and I've got built-in line. I've got different sample rates there, different buffer sizes as well you can go to. Depending on the machine you're using, you may have to, they're preset as they are at the moment, but if you want to have a faster response time or a higher quality sound, you need to work those out and figure out whether your machine will cope with it before it breaks up. And the first indicator of your machine not coping with the audio on a device is it'll start breaking up and crackling, or you might get dropped out notes and stuff like that. Then you've got MIDI input devices, and there they are. And then input channels as well you can come to. I'm going to go for all on there. And then we've got the tempo setting. And then, so I've got that all set up now. And there's two things you can do then. Of course, you can go and start, if you're a synth geek, you can start editing straight away by using the filters and stuff. But the first thing you might want to do is go through some of the presets. So you can step through them here. And then you could also go here to load, and you've got different things you can go through then. So there's so much to go through. We've got gated sounds. And straight away, it does sound very analog. It reminded me, as I started going through it, a bit of a Korg, early Korgs. I'm not sure what it is modelled on, but it's got a very kind of poly 6 sound in places when you start, especially when you start doing some of the bass sounds and stuff. So if we go through it as well, there's virtually everything in there, and obviously I don't have time to go through it, and you can download it yourself anyway. So I'll go through some of the pads, so something like this, and these were the kind of sounds that started to remind me of Korg. Just go through a couple of those. Now, a couple of things I noticed straight away as I started to tweak a bit is that the filters and the EQ section are very analog. They're very, very responsive. So if I take this EQ for a second and just... You can see there, or hear it, should I say, they really do work. So they're pretty ballsy filters, and so there's the EQ, so I'm going to filter as well. So that gives it a very analog presence in terms of the tweakability of it. Feels very analog for a plug-in based synth. It does sound very analog as you start to work with it, and it's often you use some plugins and you're pushing filters all the time, or you're pushing the EQ very hard, but you don't need to do this on this. It's almost like they've taken the design that they've used in their audio plugin stuff that we use in their rack-based stuff and put it into a synth in the same way. So it's very, very responsive, and far more responsive than a lot of VIs, as you can see. bass in particular. It's really, really throaty there. So let's move on to another sound. Let's go down to some of the basses now. What's interesting as well is there's FM and pulse width modulation and phase distortion synth as well. You can use these. And that's now sending to oscillator 1. What I also found as well is the pulse width stuff is really nice as well. So let's find a sound that's got some pulse width on it. So I think some of the early stuff that I had in going back to the early stuff here. So just turn that off for a second. And again, the pulse width works it's very responsive. Sometimes again, pulse width stuff can be just pretty nondescript. So I'm just going to for a second take the delay off for a second. Now the great thing then is we've got this mod matrix where we can send stuff to different destinations. So for example, I could take LFO3 here and I could send it to the pulse width stuff, which is what you'd normally do anyway. But I always find pulse width is most useful when you start to modulate it. So we're just going to go to the PW. There we go, oscillator 1 pulse width. So we go there. Let's change the type. Just put this back on. Change the time nice and slow. We can choose the oscillator. Just choose that one now. Add the sub in. And that's a triangle, 1 octave lower. Let's put some chorus in. Distortion. Push some more bottom end in. Pull the gain back a bit. You see, it's really gutsy. Put some low pass in. Some bit crusher in. And take the VCA down a bit. Love this punch that adds just a bit more dynamism into the VCA. Now let's go to the sequencer for a second. Now we're building this sound and we could go in and you can see the sequencer's already got a setting in it, and we can come in and we can come down to sequencer and it's going to play that sequence part. At the moment, steps-wise, it's nothing to do with a bad Welsh band. It's got 8 steps. We can lengthen that all the way along. Take it to 8 again. Just draw the steps in. Or you can type them in as well. Turn them off. Speed that up a bit now. Make it 8. octave lower now. So I'm doing that all with one oscillator. Let's bring the second one in again. Pulse that. Put that in as well. Do some fine tuning on it. So you see it's really, really simple to use. Some really great features as well. Let's say you've got a sequence like this sequence in now that we like. We could turn off the load section for the sequencer now, and we can load in another sound but use the same sequencer. So we can say, okay, I'd like to now hear that with plastic bass 1. And just audition now the sequencer part that I've created. So you might have a track like a bass part you've created and you want to just hear that a few times over and see how it is, or you want to load the sequencer in with the sound, then you can do that as well. Let's get some sequence on again. Let's turn it on. Some great bass sounds there. So polysynth, let's try this. So there's an analog sound. Mentioned Poly 6 earlier, there's a Poly 6. So I don't think they're claiming it's sort of modelled anything, but it has got a distinctly analog sound, and I think partly that's to do with some great filter and the great audio sort of amp section as well. So they really do make a difference to the sound of a synth, especially a modelled synth. What can I say really? There's so much you can try out yourself by downloading the demo, but on this quick first look at it and this quick show and tell, and going through it and trying it out and not really reading the manual, I have to say that I'm very impressed with it. The idea of Waves making a virtual instrument was somewhat of a shock and a surprise, I think, to many of us. I suppose the question is, can they do in plugins, in VIs, what they've managed to do in the rest of the market? And I have to say their first outing is very impressive, and particularly the sound of it and the usability and the tweakability. And if you're a synth fan, and especially a retro synth fan, then I'd highly recommend you download it and try it out for yourself and try the demo and see what you think yourself. But it gets a big thumbs up from us at Pro Tools Expert. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you again soon.